but we're all really helpful. We want to promote the breed, and we want to help, continue educating judges on the breed, because it is many times when you look at it, you see the markings, and the judge tends to get overwhelmed and start to focus. They start thinking like a tan, right? And I've had both breeds and had them both for years. They start thinking and judging it more like a tan than a commercial rabbit with a pattern. And that's, so, we're here to help educate and reach out to any breeders. We're a great family. Both these here. All right. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about silver martins today, and I'm going to kind of cover it in a little bit of 3 stages. A little bit about the breed itself, its history, why I love it so much. Move on a little bit more into the overall breeding characteristics of it, and of course, very importantly, how to select your stock, and when you're judging, some of the aspects that you would judge on. So I kind of call this Silver Marten 101. And like I said, this is a breed that's very near and dear to my heart. I've had the breed probably over 30 years. I started in them in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the things that really drove me to really like this rabbit is that it's a multi-purpose rabbit in a 4-class package. The rabbit could, Silver Marten, they make great pets. They're fabulous on the show table, so they meet the fancy. And they also meet the commercial. They're great meat and fur rabbits. So you actually have a rabbit that's at the larger end of the 4-class rabbit, but has all of the commercial characteristics of a breed such as your Californian or your New Zealand. So again, excellent meat rabbit, excellent show rabbit, and they do make great pets. They're also very easy to raise. So I highly recommend them for beginners or even the seasoned breeder who just wants kind of a no fuss rabbit that you can breed. You can get 4 to 10 in a litter. I personally like the smaller litters because they do grow faster. They're great foster mothers. You can pretty much put any breed, if you have other breeds that are not great mamas, put them in with the Marten and they'll accept the babies, any size, any age. They also grow out very quickly. They are a smaller boned rabbit. Again, with the commercial type, so you get a lot of good full loin, you get a lot of meat on the animal. So they don't take as much to feed as some of the other larger breeds do. So it's something else that's pretty nice about them. Recently, I said about the personality. I said they have an easygoing personality most of the time. Recently, I've been getting a lot of questions, and there's been a lot of comments in some of our different Facebook groups about our Silver Martens wild and crazy. We can't get it. It's trying to attack us. It's trying to bite us. We can't get it to pose. And that's just any rabbit. If a rabbit isn't handled a lot, if you're stressed out, the rabbit may get a little crazy. Most aggressive I've had with Martens is usually mothers. And like I said before, they're very good foster moms. So they happen to be very protective of their litters. And a lot of times will not let you get near the litter after it's born. They tend to calm down after a few days. They also make excellent showmanship rabbits. A lot of young folks today are using them because, again, you've got a rabbit that poses up naturally. You'll see that here a little bit later when I actually get into posing of the Silver Marten. And it's just a calm animal. And last of all, they're just a lot of fun. They all have different personalities. It's just a beautiful rabbit that, again, it's very near and dear to my heart. Okay, so let's go into lesson number 1, the history of the Silver Marten. And I kind of like to refer to the comment of one is, oh, sorry, just to the next slide earlier. One is not like the other, okay? The Silver Marten was actually founded in the 1920s. In a standard chinchilla litter, a sport showed up, and the sport just happened to be what you know today as our Silver Marten. It was a black rabbit with markings, pattern markings. I like to call it the negative of the chinchilla. So this showed up. They started breeding them and found that they would breed true, and so the Silver Marten was born. The first color recognized was blacks, and then blues, chocolates, and sables. It is a heritage breed. As I said, it was founded nearly 100 years ago. It's nearly it's a heritage breed. The Silver Marten Rabbit Club was actually founded in 1927. So it's one of the oldest breeds that in existence today. It was a very popular breed up through probably the 1980s to early 1990s. It was also, like its founding father, the standard chinchilla. However, it has now found itself classified as a rare breed on the Livestock Conservation Register. The breeders, those of us who have them, we're working very hard to try to encourage more breeders to raise them, and hopefully this presentation will pique some of your interest, and you'll want to go out and get some silver martins. We are starting to see a surge in people interested in them. A lot of breeders from the 80s and the 90s who had them as 4-Hers are now adults with children of their own, and they understand what a great rabbit they are all around, are reaching out and getting back into the breed. So that's good news for the rabbit. Records held. This is little known history. You go to our ARBA conventions, you see absolutely beautiful rabbits up on the table. And there's just a few facts about the Silver Marten that a lot of people didn't know. It was the first breed to win a Best in Show at an ARBA convention, at an official ARBA convention. It was the very first breed to win it. That was won in 1971 in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Ellsworth Tibbetts. It holds the record of being the second breed with the most open Best in Shows at ARBA conventions. The Silver Marten holds five Best in Shows. It's only bested by the New Zealand. And 3 of the Best in Shows are held by the same breeder. It's the only breed of ARBA Best in Show winner that has been won multiple times by the same breeder with the same breed, and that is Tex Thomas. He won it in 1983, 1996, and 2018. And then Ron Riddle won Best in Show at the ARBA convention in 2004 with the Silver Marten. Now, this kind of brings back some good memories for me, and probably what I found is one of the most wonderful times I've ever judged Silver Martens. We held the national convention about 25, 30 years ago in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we were blessed to have Ellsworth Tibbetts and Tex Thomas at that show, who both exhibited in 1971. And Ellsworth did win BOB at that convention. And I had the honor of judging about 120 Silver Martens at that show at one of this, at the specialty show there. And the quality was just fabulous. So it was a little, that really brings back some fond memories. Okay, let's go and move on to lesson number 2, which is the varieties. And I'm going to go into a little more detail in here. As most know, there are 4 recognized varieties. As I mentioned earlier, there's the black, the blue, a chocolate, and the sable. And they're actually listed here not only as how they're listed and how they were recognized, but also by their popularity. You will see more blacks at a show, followed by blues. Chocolates are on a rise, and sables are on a rise, but they tend not to be as prevalent at a show as the blacks and the blues are. There are 3 other varieties that will pop up in litters, and that are not recognized by ARBA, and that is the smoked pearl, the lilac, and the seal. Both the smoked pearl and the lilac, there is interest right now in taking CODs out on those particular varieties and see if they can be added to the standard for varieties currently recognized. Okay, so let's look a little bit into the individual colors. So the black is your standard black. It's a jet black. It merges into a dark blue undercolor. The eyes are a brown. You have your standard DQs, and we're going to go into DQs a little bit further in this presentation. Faults are scattered white hairs on the body. In these 2 pictures, at the top is actually our Best in Show 2018 ARBA convention black, and you will see the nice jet black with the nice ticking silvering going up its side. And right below it is a picture of a black that is not in condition, has very blotchy, uneven color, which is a severe fault. You'll see that this particular rabbit is actually starting to come into coat, but you see that it is the off color. When breeding blacks, the recommended crosses are black to black, black to blue, and black to chocolate. The blue is, again, a uniform dark blue that goes clear down to the undercolor. The eyes are a blue-gray. Again, your DQs, your standard DQs, white spots, eye color, other than anything, blue-gray. And the standard across the breed, again, it's another wonderful thing about this breed is the faults are pretty standard, as are the DQs across the breed. So again, very easy to easy to understand for especially beginners, and easy to work towards. This is the best of variety blue from the 28 ARBA convention. Right below it is a picture. If you look towards the lower hindquarter, you'll see that the color in this particular blue is almost a yellowish. It's almost a lilac. And many times when the blue is born, it looks almost lilac in color because it's such a light blue, but that does molt out into the darker color. Recommended crosses for the blues are blue to blue and blue to black. This picture of this chocolate looks almost black, but if you actually were to zoom in on it, you're going to see that it is a very dark chocolate, almost like a bittersweet chocolate. It emerges to a lighter chocolate color. You get the eyes are brown. They can have a ruby cast. Again, standard DQs and false that you see with the other varieties. Recommended crosses are chocolate to chocolate and chocolate to black. This picture underneath the 2018 BOV is a chocolate that is not in condition. And you can see in this code, it's very blotchy. It's also very almost rust colored and very light. The chocolates do tend to get sunburned or very easily, or get burnt based on the humidity. They are one of the more difficult colors to raise and keep uniform, which is another reason I think we don't see it across the table as much, because as we go through, you're going to see that how important color and condition is with the silver marten. Sables should be a dark sepia brown on the head, ears, and legs. And I think this is one of the most beautiful colors when it is actually in condition. But again, it is getting this rabbit in condition. It should be kind of a medium sepia across the saddle that transitions into a lighter color along the sides. The eyes, again, brown with the ruby cast, standard DQs. False, standard false, but like with them, the standard actually calls out on the sable splotchy color as a fault. And I do have the next slide here where I want to show some different examples of the sable color, because you will get them from very light to very dark. Recommended breeding crosses for sables is sable to sable. Now, the recommended crosses that I've just called out, those will give you the recognized colors. Yes, you can cross all of these colors, but if you cross a sable to a blue, you may get a smoke pearl marten. Okay, if you cross a blue to a chocolate, you're going to potentially get lilacs. Maybe not in the first crosses, but further down. So just understand when you breed the different colors, and if you're selling these rabbits to people, let them know that, hey, by the way, you're getting a blue, but there's sable in the background. You could have something pop up, such as a smoke pearl marten. Okay, so here are some examples of variation in the sable color. Photo number 1 is very dark. It's almost a seal. You can see a little bit of shading, but when this particular rabbit molts out, it's going to be just a standard solid, very dark sepia across the body with no shading. The second photo is much lighter. Now, this is a young junior, and you can actually see on the face where it has a very good color on the face, good color on the head and ears. It is shading down to a lighter color on the sides, but still very light across the back. This rabbit will most likely molt into a very nice sable color. Photo number 3 is very blotchy. This rabbit would be faulted very heavily for having uneven color. And photo number 4, again, some very young juniors, but if you look at it, you can see the 3 distinct colors that you could potentially get even in one litter. So the very first one is very light. The middle one's pretty much what you're looking for. And then the last one shows it's darker. Now, none of these, of course, have molted into the beautiful sable markings that we've seen in some of the other photos, but this is more of an example just to show you how the color can vary so much. Unrecognized colors. I mentioned those a little bit earlier, and I wanted to throw in some pictures of them so people could kind of understand why there is interest in potentially recognizing these 2 colors and getting the CODs on them. The first one is the smoke pearl marten. It's a beautiful, rich smoke gray across the saddle and on the heads and the ears, as you see, very similar to a sable marten, but with a nice smoky gray that then blends down into a much lighter color along the sides. The lilac is just kind of a natural. When you have any breed that has black, blues, and chocolates in it, a lilac is kind of the the fourth color that seems to make it all kind of come together. And again, it's a beautiful dove gray with a pinkish tint, with a ruby red eye color to it. And so again, I just want to kind of show this to you, show that where some of the interest is going with this breed. Okay, so lesson number 3, it's approximately a 50-50 breed. And, you know, people say to me when I refer to it, well, what do you mean by 50-50 breed? And it's like, well, you know, almost half the points for this breed are on type, and the other half are on fur, condition, and color. Okay. Yes, fur, condition, and color, when you look at the standard, do all have individual points. You know, fur's 20, color's 22, condition's 5. But when you add those together, they all come up to about half of the rabbit. And you cannot have it individually without affecting the sum of the others. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on also. This markings come in a distant third for points in the standard right now. Okay. So when breeding or judging, the order of precedence for me is as follows. Type. Breed for type first, then you breed for color and fur and condition, and then markings. Okay. And when judging, it's the same thing. I judge on type, color, fur, and condition, and all else being equal, markings are then taken into consideration because there are only 13 total points. But overall, may the best balanced rabbit win. And we're going to show some pictures here, some balanced versus some unbalanced animals, and how the type, color, and fur all work together to give you that beautiful winning silver Marten. Okay, so let's go and talk about type here a little bit. Okay, so the type of a silver Marten consists of the general type, which is your body. Then you have your head, eyes, ears, feet, legs, and tail. Pretty much standard as you would with any other breed of rabbit that you have. It is a commercial type. And there are a lot of breeds out there that have commercial type, but when you actually look at the standard tailors it a little bit. So you may not be quite as deep of a breed, which a silver Marten is, as it might be like a New Zealand, may not be quite that depth, but it should have good depth. The peak should be at the center of the hindquarters. The width should have a gradual taper from the shoulders to the hindquarters. The rabbit should not be long or boxy. It should not, you know, and boxy, when I use that as a description to people, it's where the shoulders are as wide or wider than the hips. It basically looks like a brick. And the animal should also not be hippy or weak through the loin or hindquarters. And the next few slides will give you some examples of some good and some bad. Okay, so when we look at the general type, and these are two side views, the first rabbit is good type. Okay, you see a gradual rise. The top line should start right before the ears, behind the ears, at point A. It should have a gradual rise to where it peaks right above the hips, which is point B, and then gradually continue to go off, slope off to show a good full hindquarter all the way to the base of the tail, and where you see point C is. This gives it showing a good full loin. And then also with the balance, you want a nice full head with a balanced ear. Your buck's head will tend to be a little heavier than your doe's head, but you do not want a long and snippy head or excessively long ears. The second rabbit is a bad example. When you start out from the top line behind the ears, you will see that A to B is not gradual. This rabbit actually is very low and weak in the shoulders. It has more of a mandolin type, which you do not want. The rabbit peaks just a little soon, and then it cuts off sharply at C, where you can see where the rabbit is very undercut. It should go straight down. Instead, it drops in. This is causing it to be very low in the hindquarters and very weak in the loins and somewhat hippy of an animal. If you look at this picture, you do not see a balanced rabbit. You actually see a rabbit with a little bit longer ears, and again, very long and weak through the shoulders. Here's some 3 top-down views. And the first one, the rabbit, these are all about the same age, and these are young rabbits. But if you look at the first view, this rabbit is very narrow. If you look at it, there's not a real taper or not a gradual taper from the shoulders to the hindquarters. You can see where it's very straight, and also you can see where it is more of a V shape in the hindquarters, causing it to be very, very pinched. The second picture, the rabbit is actually very wide. It's not the full definition of blocky, but again, you don't have that nice gradual taper from the shoulders to the lower hindquarter, and you can actually see the loin is weak here with some protruding hips. If this rabbit was a little fuller in the hindquarter, it would have more of that brick-like look where the hips, the width is equally as wide in the hindquarters or the rear of the rabbit as it is through the shoulders. The last picture shows a gradual taper from the shoulders through the midsection. I would like to see this rabbit a little fuller through the lower hindquarters. It is slightly undercut, but if you look at the three examples, you can kind of see that if I was to take this rabbit and then take a side view of it, the top or the depth would be equal to the width. Okay. Disqualifications. You don't see a lot of disqualifications when judging silver martens. I like to contribute that to the fact that most breeders of silver martens cull very heavily. We breed for the best, and we like to put the best on the table. So because we do cull so heavily, you very rarely see very many DQs go across the table. But the most common DQs or disqualifications that you're going to see is weight, number one. There are basically two types of silver martens that you'll see across the table. You'll see a smaller silver marten that is a lighter, finer boned rabbit, and then you'll see a little bit larger silver marten that is more of a medium bone, a little fuller animal. The smaller rabbits are beautiful on the table. They are very nicely balanced, but they tend to be right borderline, and you'll see more silver martens underweight than you actually will see a silver marten going overweight. If you have a beautiful type silver marten pushing that upper weight limit, that is just hold on to that rabbit because size is very important. And another thing that you see, common disqualification, is mismatched or white toenails. This is mostly in your dilute colors, your blues, your sables is where you're going to see this more. And typically it will be that middle digit on each front foot that tends to be white. And that's pretty common across a lot of breeds with these particular colors. White spots, usually if you see this, it's going to be across the back. Now, do not mistake stray silvering across the back as white spots. You know, follow the standard definition of a white spot per the standard. And again, you will see these typically across the back of a silver marten. Rarely will you see it on the head or the ears. Now, there are some rare disqualifications that I'd like to call out and show you an example of here. And one is eye color other than what's called out. Okay, so your black should have a brown eye, your chocolate should have a brown eye, your blues have a blue gray eye. And here's three examples of eye color. The first picture is a black with a brown eye per the standard, pretty normal. The second picture is actually a black, but it actually has a blue gray eye. So when judging blacks, a lot of times, not a lot of times, but you will come across occasionally a marbled eye or a blue-gray eye. The third picture is actually a blue with the correct eye color with the blue-gray eye. And I'm showing this as an example so that you can kind of see that the rabbit in the middle between the two, from what the blue should be, what the black should be, as to what then you actually get. You will occasionally also see brown eyes and blues. I've seen this cross the table a lot. I shouldn't say a lot, but I have seen this as another rare disqualification, but it does happen to where your blue will have the brown eye. Okay. Other colored fur spots, and again, not to be confused with dead coat, which I've given some examples of earlier in this presentation, but on a rare occasion, and I have to say, I probably have never seen this in a silver marten that I've raised or seen across the table, but it is always a possibility, and that is that you could have a stray blue spot and a black, or a stray chocolate spot, or it's just any other colored fur spot. The last one, satinized coat, and you're going to satinized coat. Yes, occasionally a marten will pop out that has a satin coat. It's absolutely a beautiful rabbit, but again, it's not recognized, and it's the wrong coat completely. Now, we're going to talk a little more about color and coat in here. And a silver marten is a beautiful luster, has a luster to the coat, has a lot of slick and shine to the coat. But don't confuse that luster and slick and shine to a satin coat. A satin coat does have the hollow hair shaft, and it's normally seen when you flip the rabbit over and actually see the belly color, and you see that ivory cast to the white belly color. And when you look at it closer, you will notice that the fur structure is very different. I have only ever seen the satinized coat in blues. And again, very rarely, and most of these will not come across the table, but you might actually get them if at home and you're breeding, and they're things to be aware of and look for when you're breeding. Okay, so let's go a little bit into fur, color, and condition. And earlier I made a statement, excuse me, that I want to explain a little bit, go into a little more depth of explaining. Fur, condition, and color all have individual point values, but you cannot have the one without affecting the sum of the others. And so again, next few slides are going to break that out of what that actually means. Okay, so when you actually look at it, fur and color are almost equal in points. Color's 22 points, fur is 20 points. However, when you combine them together, now all of a sudden you have 42 points on a rabbit that is 40 points a type. So again, don't take me literally when I say 50-50, but it is pretty much 50-50. You've got almost an equal amount of points on fur when you combine fur and color as you do with the type. So the silver marten fur is a commercial fur that again is tailored specific to the breed. It has some very unique characteristics. It should have good density, but it's not going to be as dense as many of the other commercial breeds are. The denser a silver marten coat tends to then affect actually the color of the coat. You don't quite get as much of that luster and that beautiful, again, I'm going to use the term slick, and we talk about that here a little bit, with an incredibly dense coat. The texture is slightly finer, and again, a little bit slicker than other commercial breeds, and that gives us this beautiful luster. When you combine the density and the texture, you get a really snappy flyback coat. Okay, as mentioned earlier, color again is unique for each variety. But they do, again, have one thing that's in common. The color should always be uniform. It should not be mealy, and I have some examples of some mealy color here. And it should be clean with no scattered white hairs across the back. It should just be a good, especially solid, smooth, uniform color. So the color and the fur combined together gives you this. If you don't have condition or of a coat, you're not going to have the good, clean color. And then that's going to affect your fur, because your fur is also not going to be in condition. So you're not going to get that beautiful, snappy flyback. So that's why the color and fur together really comes up. They directly affect each other. So they become the sum together affects the overall appearance and balance of the animal. The color, the fur, we talked a little bit about lustrous, and you heard me use the word slick a little bit. That's a term used by silver marten breeders, and that is that this, you'll hear us a lot of times, especially judges, say this rabbit has slick, and that means that rabbit is just in prime coat condition, and it's got a good flyback, very snappy, good color, just a very nice balanced rabbit overall. Okay, so here is an example slide video that's going to show you the flyback coat. Let's see how this will work. Hope it'll work. For some reason it's not wanting to play. I tested this before. I wanted to test it earlier and it was working. So, but again, if we have a little bit of time at the end, I'll bring up just the individual video that's not embedded. Okay, so let's just go on to the next slide. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's stick with fur, color, and condition. And earlier when I was mentioning the points, I said condition was 5 points, and you're like, oh well, that's only 5 points. That's not a lot. Well, no, that's not. It has the fewest points when you don't count the individual markings, which we'll talk about a little later. But it has the biggest impact on getting a well-balanced silver marten. And this is why, poor coat condition leads to a dead coat. A dead coat leads to poor texture or density, which then again leads to no flyback. Okay. A dead coat will lead to a lack of luster, which leads to poor color, splotchy, or uneven. So now you're back to your overall fur and color. So condition impacts all of that. And so those 5 points become very important. So in summary, if your silver marten is not in condition, you've already lost almost 50% of the total points of the rabbit. And most of us will not even put a silver marten on the table if it's not in condition. Okay, so let's talk. We've talked about type, and we've talked about fur, condition, and color. We can't still talk about silver martens unless we talk about one of the things that makes it very unique, and that is the markings. Granted, there are only 13 points on the markings, but without the markings, you would just have another solid rabbit. You wouldn't have the beautiful silver marten that has inspired so many other breeds to accept the silver marten variety. But they're called markings. It's actually listed as markings in the standard, but it's really not. It's more of a pattern. Okay, the pattern, which consists of your silvering, your triangle and collar, eye circles, nostril, and the belly color, those all together, that is a pattern. It's what gives the breed, again, its uniqueness. Okay, and the standard does say it is a pattern. So again, there's a difference between a marked breed and a breed that has a pattern to it. The litters will breed true, pretty much. You're going to always, you breed a marten to a marten, you're going to get marked babies. But occasionally you will get a solid rabbit in it, or cow martens. Don't worry if this happens. It's very common. They, of course, cannot be shown. They're not recognized. But again, it's nothing to be alarmed at if you do get that. Markings, when judging it, should always be assessed on their crispness and cleanliness. This again can affect the color. Okay, and I'll show you an example here. Now, one of the biggest, I just say, points of irritation for silver marten breeders is when judging the judges that put a lot of emphasis on the overall markings or the triangle. They start talking about the eye circles and the nostril, and they talk more about the markings, or they say this rabbit won because it has a better triangle than the next rabbit. Again, remember the point structure. There's only 13 points total on the pattern of the silver marten. The silver marten, it should not be judged as a marked breed. Markings are considered when all else is equal, and that is type, fur, color, and condition. They are if you have two extremely beautiful animals up there that are equal, the markings would break the tie. And that's where, though, the markings, again, come into crispness and positioning of the markings. Okay. So if we look at the silvering is the silver tip guard hairs that run up from the rear. They should carry up well up the sides. They should not extend more than halfway up the side. So here's two examples here. If you look at the first one, you can see that this is very uniform silvering that goes around the hindquarters. It's got a nice sweep across it and gets a little bit lighter as it carries up to the side, but it stops about halfway. If it goes any further than that, that starts to become a fault. And of course, that also affects the overall color of the animal. So the other thing is, don't confuse silvering with white hairs, okay? If you note here on this example in picture number 2, you will see that the silvering is just on the tip of the hair. White hairs will carry clear down to the skin. The silvering is just the tip. Now, many times in a litter, you're going to find the baby that's got a white spot between its eyes. This is also very common. And if you were to actually pull that back with your finger, you're going to see that 95% of the time, just the tips of that is silvered, and that usually does typically molt out as the rabbit gets a little bit older. If it does go clear to the skin and doesn't molt out, then it is a white spot, but that's something also that's very rare. So I tell people, when you're judging, if you see that spot right between the eyes, just take a look at it, and you'll probably notice that, like in picture number 2, just the tip of it is silvered. Okay, the belly color should be a nice silver white. It is desirable to have an undercolor. And when you do have, it's not a DQ not to have the undercolor, but the rabbits that do have the undercolor tend to have a much deeper surface color, tends to be richer, and very, very nice. This example here shows you the blue undercolor, and you will see that the silver white hairs around it. The triangle collar, the triangle should extend from the nape of the neck. The collar does run around, and then you have the neck to the jaw and the nostrils. You have, your eye circles, your nostril markings. They should be white. It all should be confined to the mediate area, and all markings, as I mentioned earlier, should be crisp and clean. There's 2 examples here. The very first one, you will see a lot of mealiness and excessive ticking, causing the markings to not be crisp. This in turn affects the color. So you'll see that the eye band is very wide. You'll see the nostril markings are very wide, and just a lot of scattering, and not this nice deep black color. Again, this is a very young rabbit, but if you look at the rabbit in the second picture, these animals are the exact same age, and you're going to see a very sharp, clean color. The markings are very distinct. They're not running together. The ear base is clean, and the nostrils are clean. Okay, so pretty much in summary, silver martens are great rabbits for the beginner to the experienced breeder. You need to understand that type is very important. That's why I've stressed it here 3 times. You get that beautiful type along with great fur, good color and condition, and that gives you an overall beautifully balanced rabbit. And once they grace your barn, in my opinion, they are there to stay. And really, and most importantly, I always kind of like to end my brief discussions on silver martens with this: is always remember, they're imitated by many, but nothing beats a real silver marten. As I mentioned earlier, you'll see the silver marten variety grace the table across a lot of breeds, and they are absolutely gorgeous. But there's only one true silver marten. So David, let me see if I can bring that video up here.
Okay.
Let me do it one more time here. I think this is the shorter clip of it. But as you can see, this rabbit is a little bit out of condition, but overall you can actually see the quick, snappy flyback of the coat.
The first question is, when you're seeing them at the national level, I mean, what really is those first cuts, or what are the cuts that judges use, like yourself? What is it then type and then color, or how do you end up kind of splitting the class up?
Well, I'll tell you, if I have a very large class, if the rabbit is in severe molt, and and I think, David, you kind of walk through. I like, when I first judge, I like to walk through and kind of see what's in the holding pins and the carriers, and you right away. Usually, if one's in terrible condition, it's not going to have the color. I'll pull that rabbit out and take a look at what its type's like. Okay, if it just happens to have dynamite type, I might put it in the back to look at again later. But usually there's going to be 5 to 10 rabbits up there on the table. Again, depending on how large the class is. Let's say the class is 25 or 30, which is a really good size class. And most, probably the largest you'll see around now for silver Martens. You're going to get half that class that's going to have good color and condition along with good type. So my first cut a lot of times is on conditions. Like I said earlier, most of the time we won't even put a rabbit on the table that does not have really good condition. Now, an exception to that would be if the rabbit just slightly starting to break across the shoulders and has excellent type and excellent depth. Your silver Marten is not going to quite be as deep as some of your other breeds, but so that's where again you start to kind of look for the balance. And if you do find that super deep silver Marten, as long as it has good width to balance, that's a rabbit that you hold on to. So my first cut a lot of times is on condition and the color and depthness of the coat.
Okay. And another question I have is, and you gave a great story earlier too about the convention there in New Mexico, or Albuquerque, New Mexico. But like from your judging experience, has there been a particular class that you've been in, or like just handling a set of rabbits as a whole that was like really memorable from your experience as judging?
Yeah, and actually, there was a set of some beautiful junior black does, and actually, I think it was at that show, and it was a very large class. I think it was close to 25, 30 rabbits in that class, and there was probably not 10% of them that would not been able to go on to probably potentially win a best of breed. The quality was that deep. You had just a beautiful overall balanced rabbits, and that makes it very difficult when judging, because kind of up to your first question, right? When you're faced with a class that's that beautiful and that deep, what do you do? And in a case like that, it is, you're starting to really nitpick on the balance of the animal, the width of the shoulder, the depthness of the shoulder, looking for stray silvering across the back, or looking for a marking that isn't as crisp and clean as you would like it to be. You just really have to start, and it makes it's difficult. I think the thing though that what you're satisfied is at the end, and you have to express this to the exhibitors, is I may have sent your rabbit off 15th place, 15th, but the next judge could turn around and that 15th place rabbit could end up being first place. They're all the top of them. It's just down to splitting hairs, as they say. And I think that's a term as a judge that really does fit judging rabbits. Sometimes you just have to split hairs. There is one other really though memorable occasion, and it was one rabbit, but this was kind of the you say cherry on top of the cake, or the icing on the cake, but that was actually at last year's convention in Reno, David. I was selected, of course, to judge one of the youth groups for Best in Show. And I was very excited and honored to get to select Group 4, which had a beautiful blue silver Marten in it. And of course, with the breed being near and dear to my heart, it was really great to be able to look at that rabbit along with all the other beautiful animals that were up there, and assess it compared to them. So that was pretty special.
Very, very cool story. I like that. Ari, do you have any questions?
You already asked my question, actually, the first question.
Do you have anything else that you'd
you.
like to know, Ari? I mean, I think you actually joined us when I gave a similar presentation a couple months ago. So,
no, I live in Indonesia, and I only travel to US for convention.
Okay, well, we're glad you could join us. I know it's pretty late there, or early, depending on how you want to look at it.
Oh yeah.
It's like, wait, is it 2 a.m. there right now?
Yep, that's right.
All right, that was amazing. I can't necessarily think of anything else then. I greatly appreciate you doing the presentation. So
I appreciate it. And, my contact information is on the first slide. I encourage anyone interested in the breed, please reach out. If you have any questions after viewing this video, feel free to message me, call me, email me. We have Silver Marten breeders are a lot of judges race Silver Martens, actually, as you know, David. And but we're all really helpful. We want to promote the breed, and we want to help continue educating judges on the breed, because it is many times when you look at it, you see the markings, and the judge tends to get overwhelmed and start to focus. They start thinking like a tan, right? And I've had both breeds and had them both for years. They start thinking and judging it more like a tan than a commercial rabbit with a pattern. And that's, so, we're here to help educate and reach out to any breeders. We're a great family.